We are recording. Welcome, everybody. This is Your Personal Record. It's the show where I, Adam Realman, talk to my guests about, well, really, they talk to me, I guess. I'm not real. I'm just sort of leading some questions, but where we talk about music, about record collecting, about whatever we want to talk about. Today, I have got a very, very special guest who's zooming in with us from a beautiful, beautiful location. I mean, just without saying anything, just look at that room. The way it frames him so beautifully, and his hair and everything. And let me introduce my friend over here. He is a record producer. We're going to talk about that. A record collector. We're going to talk about that. He's in a band, Caged Animals. We're going to talk about that. Friends, let's welcome to the Zoom today, Vincent Cacchione. Now, did I pronounce that correctly? I should have asked you before we started, Cacchione or Cacchione?
Well, the real way is Cacchione, but when we got to this country, we stopped saying that altogether. We all say Cacchione. For years we've been willingly mispronouncing our name to fit in, to blend into this American experiment. We are here for it. The Cacchiones.
It is the melting pot of America here, and you are just a victim of it, I guess. So
we're all victims of it.
That is true. Anyway, real man is not the real name. So that said, it's the stage name. Wow,
right on, brother.
You got a lot going on here. So now I want to go back. I want to start with you as a kid growing up in Jersey, and your dad, Gino, was a stand-up comic.
Correct. Yeah, my dad was a stand-up, and he worked mostly the bread and butter of how he fed our family was he did the that sort of Catskill route, that classic New York, New Jersey comic route that so many comics got their start on. My dad was up there in the Catskills at the Friar Tuck and the Caesar's Palace and all these different places doing
Villa Roma, I'm sure,
and doing hardcore ethnic Italian, totally all those kind of spots, and doing that hardcore ethnic Italian comedy that he did. And these were like finely tuned. It's like a finely tuned set with that audience in mind, and delivering a great laugh out loud moments for those people taking those little weekend and week-long jaunts up to the Catskills.
And did you go along with him?
A lot of times, it'd be fun. It'd be like a fun thing to go with my dad and watch him work, and hang out in the resort during the day and like go horseback riding and sneeze all day, and then come back to the room and then maybe get to watch his set, and that was always really fun. It was like magical to watch my dad, make a room of people lose their minds. As a kid, it felt like, whoa, like, talk about respecting your dad. To see him do that was just like, holy crap! I can't believe he's my dad. He's so good. Everyone's with him. He's got the whole room with him.
And was that something that sort of steered you into entertainment, or how did that work?
Probably unconsciously, definitely not consciously. I don't think. For me, it was music that got me interested, and and certainly my parents are really helpful, like, because they both love music. We had a massive record collection at home, compared to all my other friends. I guess not quite like what I'm seeing on your wall, but like, we had a couple thousand records, growing up. So I had all this music around. We had a turntable. I had, my mom had seen, 5 Dylan shows in the 60s and 70s and Woodstock and Bowie and all this stuff. And my dad was really into Dylan and Lou Reed, and Tom Waits was his favorite artist. So I had a lot of great taste in the house to draw from. And what ended up happening for me is that, I'm 37 years old now, but I was 10 years old when Kurt Cobain killed himself. And when Kurt Cobain killed himself, I was already the biggest Nirvana fan of any 10-year-old, that's for sure. I was obsessed with them, and they were the first like contemporary band I connected to and like felt drawn to, and they were a great band too from a just becoming a music fan standpoint, because they like left a really great breadcrumb trail for kids to be like, oh, well, why don't you check out, the Velvet Underground, here's this cover we did of their song, like, go find their records, and so then I would go to the local record shop and close by to me in Jersey, and I would annoy the hell out of the guys behind the counter and be like, well, where can I find this Velvet Underground record? And like, of course, they wouldn't have it, and they give me some like the live record. I think that live CD, the live 1993 record, was the first one I got. I was like 11 years old or 12 years old, and they special ordered it for me, but I needed to hear the Velvet Underground because Nirvana said so.
That
Kurt
was
Cobain
that was
said
the
so.
reunion record, right?
Totally, and it's great.
It's
Um,
it's funny about that record in particular. I got one off of eBay about with 2 years ago, and it had records 1 and 2 twice, so I don't have records 3 and 4. And
oh yeah,
I mean,
right.
it was used. The guy refunded it. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Just keep it." And all right. So I got the blue vinyl reissue. So now I can only listen to half the show. But
Oh
anyway,
man, that's interesting. I have a jam record like that. What's the collection? I think it's called Snap.
all
I
right.
haven't listened to it in years, but anyway, it's a collection. It's a jam collection, and the labels are correct on the double vinyl. It's like sides 1, 2, 3, 4. But what actually happens is that it's just the same record twice.
Oh,
The labels are right, but somebody effed up and
at the
like labeled,
factory, yeah. Oh, that's so
yeah,
bad.
1 and 2, 3 and 4, and everybody. I'm guessing there was a whole batch of these jam records that people got without the second record.
Oh, that's awful. All right. So anyway, so you're a kid. You're going now. What record store were
Yeah.
you going to at this point?
The Record Depot. It was an indie record store in Ridgewood, New Jersey. I grew up in a town called Hawthorne, New Jersey. Ridgewood was the Hawthorne is a blue collar working class town. Didn't have a record shop. Ridgewood was the stockbroker haven. This is all right off the train. I grew up 1 block away from New Jersey Transit train that takes you to the city, and Ridge would be the next town over, but it's the bougie next town over with all the nice restaurants and a great record store. So of course I'd want to go to that record store as much as I could. So I would just bother my mom, please drive me to Ridgewood, one town over, please take me there. And she would drop me off and like let me stay there for a couple hours, which was a real hookup. But I think I was just annoying the hell out of these like 22-year-old guys that were running the record store. I was like 10, 11 years old, and I was just like obsessed with music and thinking these guys behind the counter, they're like the gatekeepers, to knowledge and to sounds. And like, I just want to I want to know what they know as much as I can. So I would sit there and just ask questions, ask them to play me stuff. They used to call it, I don't think any of them ever learned my name. I was just Nirvana Boy. Oh, it's Nirvana Boy, you know?
And so
And
now 10, 11 years old, rocking out to Nirvana,
yeah,
and this sort of moves in what direction?
it moved to the direction right away of I want to participate, and I want to play, and it felt like in that way of, I think the previous generation maybe felt about the Ramones, I think, as my generation really felt that way about Nirvana. That was the band that like said to kids like, hey, like you can participate. This isn't like rocket science. And if you like, or if you're feeling this, you can be a part of it. So
Wow.
yeah, I got I again, so then it became a couple years, which is like begging my parents, get me a guitar, you know? And finally, I think around 12, for my 12th birthday, my dad got me a guitar, like the cheapest Fender Strat that they made. And it was like, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, still to this day. And once I had that, I had my little boombox, and I'd start writing songs into it, recording myself and learning how to do that. Um, so yeah, but I don't think I would have ever done it had I not been born to this family with like a dad who was like pursuing art as a career and
Mhm.
was really supportive. My parents were supportive,
Right.
and I don't think either one of them would have like been like, our top choice for you would be musician. But I think they just grew to accept, like, yeah, you're going to be a musician. That's what you're going to do.
And they were cool with that. And I
And
mean,
yeah, and with that
that's
little bit of like,
That's terrific. That they, encouraged
Yeah.
the arts within you.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you start off listening to Nirvana. Where does the music taste move? Post Nirvana.
Well, I think, in a lot of ways that my like the first bunch of years in my teenage years were all about just trying to make sense of that bomb that like happened when Kurt Cobain, killed himself. And obviously it was my first taste of loss in this really strange way where it's like not someone but it's someone you feel intimate with because you like love this person's music. And you're really inspired by his band and this person's life. And so I got really into like punk at first. Was my first kind of like road stop because Nirvana were kind of like a punk band, an updated punk band. So I just started exploring all that and getting into all like Black Flag, digging deeper, Dead Candies, trying to like figure out all about that stuff. And that's what I was first interested in playing as well, was playing in a punk band. And I had like little bands I played in and when I was a kid. And eventually the band I had when I was 15 like kind of took off a bit. We got offered a record deal and we made a record and we
Wow.
toured. We toured in the United States. My parents let me do it amazingly.
Now you're 15 years old,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
where are you touring? I mean, what are the venues? Are these like kid
Yeah.
venues or?
No, it'd be like DIY, like punk rock spots around. We never made it out to the West Coast, but we went as far as Louisville on one trip. We went as far as Little Rock, Arkansas on another trip. Boy, was that fucking weird coming from
Wow.
Jersey and to be like, oh, we're in the deep South. Like, this is crazy.
I,
Way
who
different down here.
was the rest of the band your age, or there was like obviously some guy who knew how to drive?
Yeah. By the time we actually toured, I may have been 16, and then the eldest guy in our band was probably 17, and we had a minivan. He got the parents' minivan. We all crammed in there, and we went and played the shows, and we supported our little CD that had come out on this like tiny indie label, and and we were also getting to play shows in New York and stuff. So that was really cool for us because we were used to trying to go see shows at like Coney Island High or ABC No Rio. All these places were like punk rock meccas to the suburban, punks of
Yeah.
that time. And like we'd come and see the shows, and then we started to get invited to play them. And we were playing a bit with that band, World Inferno Friendship Society. We did a couple shows with them, and Leftover Crack. I don't know if you remember those guys.
I remember the name. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like really great punk band. They were squatters on Avenue C who you know, they like did shows in the basement, and those shows were like terrifying. Like if
Yeah.
they were the greatest thing ever. You would go down to their squat basement. There'd be like 500 kids there, going crazy, and the craziest punk band ever playing. And you're just like a water pipe breaks, and everyone's getting sprayed. Just like so unsafe, like insanely unsafe.
But that's punk rock.
That's
I
punk
mean,
rock.
now, what? So Coney Island High. I remember that place. I was there almost nightly in the in the mid. Really, it was only open for 4 maybe 5 years,
Yeah,
and
I was
what
there
a
the night it got shut down.
wow. So
Yeah, it
that
was an
was
awesome spot.
yeah, it was great. What a such fond memories. I saw the Ramones there. I mean, every time they played they would come back, they'd tour South America. They're playing soccer stadiums in Brazil, and they come back and play Coney Island High to like 150, 200 people in New York in their hometown. I mean, it's a real treat for the New Yorkers, for for the hometown people. It seemed such a small venue. But I mean,
Yeah.
what a great place. What a great place. So where does Springsteen factor in for this Jersey kid here?
Well, I didn't know him when I was younger, and I probably wouldn't have dug him anyway because my parents, like, I think they had a couple records, but they weren't like big on him or anything. My dad was really into Tom Waits, so like the side journey to my punk journey was the music of my dad. And like I'm into the Velvet Underground stuff. I'm into some stuff that kind of verges more into like serious music, songwriting music, as I think of it. And I remember my dad hears me playing a Velvet Underground album, and he comes to my door. He's like, "You're playing Lou Reed?" like he was like so happy that like I got cooler or something, like, as I'm listening to good music, and I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, that's great. He's like, what do you think of Bob Dylan? He says to me, and I said, oh, Bob Dylan, terrible hippie bullshit. Like I don't need that. Blowing in the wind, no, thank you. And he's like, he just like gave me this look like, and then I remember what he said. He said, that's the most pretentious thing that I've ever heard anyone say, and you're totally wrong. So I'm gonna get you something. He came back with Desire on vinyl,
Oh yeah.
and I played the first song, which is Hurricane, and it was a face melter. I was like, oh my god, I didn't know what Bob Dylan actually is, and I was just blown away. And so that's kind of how I started getting into the songwriting music. And so I got into Dylan first. I got further into the Lou Reed solo career, and around sometime in my late teens, I discovered those early Springsteen albums, which fit right into my Dylan thing that I had going on. And
Yeah.
I was like completely obsessed with Bob Dylan by that point. Um, so yeah, so then I love Bruce, but it didn't really come from my parents so much. It kind of more came from discovering. I don't. My friend Bubba actually was a Bruce fan, and he was like, Cacchione, you should really check out those early Springsteen albums. And when I did, and I heard songs like Rosalita, I was like, oh my god, I thought I knew what that guy was about too, and I was totally wrong. He's amazing.
Right. But what
This those
what's
notions
a
you have when you don't know some.
right? What's amazing about the stories that you're telling now is that you were heavily into Lou Reed. You knew Hal Wilner, correct? You worked with him or knew him. Who was
Totally, yeah. I knew him through Ratso.
okay, so which was going to be my
Yeah, but
next circle, which is here. Desire is the first Dylan record that you hear, in full.
yeah,
That
yeah,
the Rolling Thunder tour, Ratso's involvement with that. You
yeah,
go on to produce Ratso. I mean, so I need to know how all of these worlds collide,
yeah.
and and then we're going to talk about
That beautiful album
this
right
one right
there.
here, because this is it's let's see, how can I show this here? A masterpiece. An
Nice.
order. First of all, Ratso autographed it for me, and
So good, man.
oh no, it's great. I mean, wait, for Adam, a real man and a hero, best Larry Ratso Sloman. I mean, come
I
on,
love
that
him the
there.
most, man.
Ratso's the best. But all right, so let's go back and talk about Ratso and how you ended up producing Ratso's first album.
Totally. So, um, after I was done with that kind of like punk rock band, that band broke up. We graduated high school, the band broke up. Our last show, the band was called Give Us Barabbas. And what we did was we put on a play. And in the play, Jesus Christ comes back to life and he wants to fuck little boys. So it's just all this sacrilegious stuff, and we're really just hamming it up and making it really silly. That's what our act is. Our hit song is Jesus Christ Stole My Virginity. And
Now,
childish.
quick question before you continue.
Yeah.
The ghost of Jesus is not
Yeah.
that same Jesus. All right. Ghost of
No.
Jesus is the new Cage Animal single
Yeah.
from the album that's going to be coming out in June. We'll talk about that too. But going back, so you finish up with the Jesus play and song, and
Totally. Our what would have been our last show was going to occur at CBGB's on September 11th, 2001. And obviously that show didn't happen.
yeah.
And we were going to open for that band MDC. And then, I was 17 years old, and we're no longer in high school. We no longer all lived in the same town, and the band drifted apart. And from there, I was a little bit adrift, but at that point in my life, I was really getting into this songwriter music, and I was trying to figure that part of it out. And a couple years later, my dad passed away. And when he did pass away, it was just terrible. I was 19 years old. It was, it's a terrible moment. Um, Grief and sadness and trying to figure things out. And But the byproduct of it is it kind of pushed me more into his music in a lot of ways, like artistically. Like I started wanting to explore that a lot more, explore the things that he was about, and the things that the ways that I might be able to relate to that and like build my story into that picture. And I got really into playing folk music, and I would play at the Sidewalk Cafe over there on Avenue A in 6th Street,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I cut my teeth. And and from my like early 20s to like mid 20s, that's what I was doing. And I met Ratso through that world. I was playing with a girl named Shilpa Ray, who is a great songwriter from New York, and I was backing her on guitar. And I had met her through the Sidewalk world, and she was into my music, and I was into hers, and she was like taking off and doing great, and she's invited me to play guitar. I was like, cool. So we were playing lots of shows, and meanwhile she's not a Dylan fan at all, Shilpa, and I'm a huge Dylan fan, and she's like, this guy Larry Ratso Sloman, like, yes, I know who he is. He wrote a book on Dylan. It's like, yeah, I'm becoming friends with him, and he's the only guy I know besides you that's just this deep into the Dylan thing. And I was like, well, that's not true, but whatever. She says, you want to meet him? It's like, yeah, totally. I definitely want to meet Ratso. So she brings me down to Soho to his place, and he's like, oh, I hear you're a big Dylan fan. I'm like, yeah. It's like, you got my book? I'm like, no. It's like, already I'm dropping in estimation with Ratso. I'm like blowing it with Ratso. And he's like, you don't have my book. That sucks. Here's my book. He gives me the book. I give him my record. I just had an LP come out with my band at that point. I give him the record. And what transpired was just we became better friends over the next year. He would come out to a lot of my shows. He brought Hal to some of my shows. And Ratso and I, we'd hang out a lot. We'd talk a lot. He'd come to the gigs. He'd be the last person to leave. He would just be hanging out with all of us, getting eggs with us at some crappy diner in Brooklyn at 3 a.m. At some point we played a show at Bowery.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. We played a show at Bowery Ballroom in the summer 2010, I think it was. And Ratso was like, I've got these lyrics around. Would you ever want to write some songs with me? And I was like, yeah, definitely. Send me those lyrics. And he sent me the words, and he goes, I got something very Dylan-esque in mind for this thing. So, give me something like that. That was the creative instruction he gave me. So I kind of do that, and it's not that cool. I wasn't that proud of it. It's like, you know what? I'm going to ignore that part of it. I'm going to try something totally different. I'm just going to look at these words and see if I can make music that really brings them to life. And I made this track, and it was that song, I Want Everything. It's the first song on that record. And I record it. I'm like, this is fucking cool. Like I'm into it. And I dummied the vocal, and I sang the vocal for him. And I finished it, and then I played it for some friends. Like, this is cool, but do you think that Ratso is going to like this? Do you think this is what he's all about? I was like, I don't know. So I started to lose a little confidence. Like, maybe I shouldn't send this to Ratso. He's like a serious guy. Like, I don't want to embarrass myself, send him something he's not going to dig or whatever. I let it sit for like 2 months. A couple months came by. I played it again. I was like, nah, this is great. I'm sending this to Ratso. And if he doesn't like it, wasn't meant to be. Play it for Ratso. He flipped. He was like, this is amazing. When can we get together again? Let's do something. Wow. And so he came over, he put his own vocal on it. And then we just started this process of just going track by track. And it took us a couple years. So he was like doing books with Mike Tyson, and I was on and off the road and doing records. And it took us a couple years, but we chipped away at it. And it was just a complete labor of love for both Ratso and I. We loved working with each other, and it was all about our friendship, and it was all about kind of like bridging this world of like Ratso is this classic New York figure, and I was a younger guy in New York, and Ratso was like showing up at all our like weird punk rock DIY spots and hanging out, and taking part.
He's terrific, Ratso, which is how you and I met. Because when I did that first and only Coney Island Brewery record fair, I had invited Ratso to come down and autograph. Say, Ratso, you want to come out and hang out? bring your books and your records. And the record had come out, maybe it was a couple of months earlier. And he's, oh, yeah, I'd love to. Well, yeah, I'd love to. And, he comes down with his little shopping cart and he sets up his books. And I mean, he was moving stuff the entire day because he knew how to do it. I mean, people would see him, "Well, oh, yeah, I know," and they would like sit there because the way it was set up was like a picnic table almost. So they would sit down with him. He'd have like a session where he would talk to them, and then they'd, oh yeah, the ATM's right down there at the at the bank. They'd walk out of where you go to the ATM, give him cash, and he'd sign a book. And I'm watching this, I'm like, this is incredible. I mean, he's talking to them. Everyone gets like 15, 20, as long as they want 15, 20 minutes. Every single person is going to the ATM to buy a book or a record. Mind blowing. And
I love it.
and then you came along at the record fair, and we, he introduced, he introduced two of us, and what a guy. But he's all about connections, Ratso.
And yeah, that's what I was just going to jump in and say. Is just that, like, what you're describing is just typical Ratso to me. Like, it wasn't to make the sale. It's because Ratso is that guy. He
Yeah,
wants to get to know people. He's interested in people. He's a detective of people and human interactions, and
yeah.
that's what makes him such a special person and a great writer. As he's hungry and eager to meet people and have a moment with them. It must be so hard to be Ratso during this pandemic.
Not to be able to go out and just BS and talk. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but this, I mean, the record in and of itself is phenomenal. I mean, it's moody, and it just, it has a great vibe and a great feel to it. And Nick Cave is on this.
Nick Cave is on there. Yeah, it's amazing.
Nick Cave. I mean, I might have told you, and I might have had this story up on this show here before, but I get a call. This is, oh, it's got to be close to 10 years ago, and I get a call from Ratso, and he says, I got Nick Cave, and we need a place to shoot in Coney Island. You just got to do an interview. We got to film an interview. Could you get us in a sideshow? All right, Ratso, give me like 10 minutes. Let me make a few phone calls and see what I can do. All right. So I make a few phone calls. I call Ratso back. I say, all right, Ratso, meet me at the sideshow. We're going to go up to Marie Roberts. That's our banner painter. We're going to go up to Marie Roberts' studio. She's totally cool with it. She'll take a pause on what she's doing, and we'll film. All right, great. I'll see you in an hour. All right. Sure enough, we get there. There's Ratso and Nick Cave and a film crew. All right, let's go upstairs. Why? I watched the interview, met Nick Cave. It's like surreal, but like only in Ratso's world does this happen.
Totally, man. Yeah. I love that about Ratso. I'm so inspired about that part of his character. He has chutzpah, and he is just so charming and fun. He makes everything, he
Yeah,
makes magic happen
yeah,
around him. That's his personality. I'm now remembering a time Nick Cave was playing shows in New York, and then he was going to play a show in Philly. And Ratz was like, let's go to the Philly one. I think that's going to be more fun. I was like, okay, all right, let's go to the Philly one. He's like, you're going to drive. He tells me I'm going to drive. Okay, I'll drive. And we're going to pick up Hal and Imani Coppola. Like, that sounds like a great team. But we'll go down to Philly with all these guys. So we went down there, and we caught the show. Oh, on the way in, we get cheesesteaks. Everybody wants cheesesteaks right away. So we go straight for the cheesesteaks, and then we go to the show.
all right.
And after the show is amazing. It's Nick Cave on that Push the Sky Away album. And, they're amazing. And the show ends. We all go backstage. Now we're hanging out with all the Bad Seeds and Nick. Nick's like, do you guys want to have dinner after the show? We're like, okay. So now we're just going to do what he wants. He wants to go to this restaurant. We'll go there, wherever, So he picks a restaurant. He's like, all right, I'll have my driver take me. You guys meet me there. So we pile back into my van. It was like the touring van. We came down in the touring van. As we pile into the van, and we see Nick's car arriving at this nice looking restaurant in Philly. Nick and Warren get out, and then all of us pile out of our car. And as soon as we see them get to the door's not opening. Restaurant's gone, and his car takes off. So now what are we gonna do? We got Nick, we got Warren, we got all these people, and we got my piece of shit van. It's already toured America like 5 times, on these terrible tour. It's run down. This is the most run down vehicle in the world. But we got to stuff Nick Cave and Warren Ellis into this car too, and they jumped in like it was like it was still the '80s. It was like no problem. Like we know what this is all about. You
Wow.
you got to hop over this thing to get in the van. No problem. They jump right, suits and everything, man. It was just
Oh, and
like these
he's a
guys.
big guy.
He's a big man too. He's
Yeah.
tall and he's dressed impeccably, and he hopped right over the thing, jumped in the van. Like it was amazing. It was like, wow, this is like a best case scenario of what you get to be when you're this smart, this talented, have this much heart, and are that punk rock. This is the best case. Nick Cave is the best case scenario of what you get to be.
That's amazing. What a story.
Yeah, crazy, right?
I mean, that's like a once in a
But,
lifetime thing.
and we ended up getting cheesesteaks. Round
Again.
two.
Right. What a cry. I had tickets to go see Nick Cave, but the pandemic happened and Nick Cave didn't. That was, I think, what was it? I think it was September at Barclays this past September. It was at some point within this pandemic that they just canceled the Nick Cave show.
Okay. That would have been it, right?
Which was like so odd because my daughter says, "Oh, I got a ticket for Nick Cave, like on pre-sale," and I'm like, hello, you couldn't get two? I'm like, I'm paying for it anyway, So, all right, let me see if I can get another. And sure enough, she got like the second one right now, but it didn't happen. So that's
man. Heartbreaking.
Yeah. It will.
We had tickets for the Dylan shows that he was going to do last summer, and like every time I go, I see Dylan a lot, but I see him with Ratso every time, so it's always like we get comped tickets or whatever, and we go, and it's and my daughter loves Dylan, so
wow.
Now she's like, "Can I come too?" And I'm like, "I can't ask Ratso for a third ticket to bring a 6-year-old with me. That's not gonna happen." But anyway, so finally, I was like, I gotta just buy tickets and make sure she gets to see Bob, because every time I go, she asks, like, "Can I come?" So we bought the tickets, and then the stupid COVID, and obviously we didn't get to see him. And then he puts out maybe his best album of all time, and
without a doubt. So what's the funny thing about this whole thing? It's the same color as the Ratso album. That you get that colored vinyl variant, and it's like the same, that gold. Is it gold or copper, whatever But it's the new Dylan record is beautiful and it sounds great. Yeah, it's right. Really, like you said, some of his best. I mean, I can't listen to the Sinatra covers. I can't do that. My son, on the other hand, thinks that that's just as good as anything else Dylan's done. And the Sinatra stuff didn't resonate with me when Sinatra sang it. It's not resonating with me when Dylan's singing it. But going from Time Out of Mind until this last record is some of his best stuff. It really, I mean, the 80s might have been a little rough, late 70s might have been a little harsh, but otherwise it was really just pure gold from the 90s on, mid 90s. Wow.
Yeah, we have the same taste in Bob, it seems. I'm not really into the Christian stuff so much personally. I mean, certain songs here and there are great. Like, every record's got a couple great songs, but it's not my favorite. And, I love, like, 80s wise, I love, like, Oh Mercy. I do love Infidels. I think that's a great record.
Yeah, I like that one. I know. I mean, there's certainly, nuggets within every album that are, one of my favorite Dylan songs off of the Shot of Love record is Every Grain of Sand.
Beautiful song.
Wow. What a song.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
The melody, it's just haunting, You're gonna have Ratso cover that. He covered Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands on the next record. He's gonna cover Every Grain of Sand.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be amazing.
You'll thank me for that.
To hear him sing that song.
It wouldn't it though?
For sure. Yeah, it would be amazing. Yeah, no, I mean, and that Rough and Rowdy Ways was a sustaining record for me. It just the darkness and craziness of especially that moment, those first couple months of COVID. It was just, and I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too political, but like, whatever. I thought Donald Trump was the worst president of all time, and watching him mishandle all of that, uh, and watching so many people die, and then getting this insanely genius album from quite possibly the greatest American musician or songwriter of all time, and basically him operating at his peak levels
Yeah.
to explain America to everybody again in
Yeah.
this incredibly elegant album,
Mm.
uh, was just so sustaining and beautiful. Murder Most Foul. We're actually in Canada right now. We've been up here for the last year.
They don't have that much wood in Brooklyn.
Yeah, no, there's not as much wood in my apartment in Bushwick, but we're in my wife's hometown, and we were up there. And when we first came up here, we were quarantined in a family friend's not abandoned, but unused cabin in the middle of nowhere. I've never been so in the middle of nowhere, and I'm kind of just losing it watching. I didn't understand how bad COVID would be when we came up here. I didn't, you know, ever foresee what happened actually happening, and then it was happening. And I was, my family's all back home, all my friends are home. I'm just like, we are in this pristine remote place, as safe as we can possibly be, watching our home and all our friends get affected by this horrible thing. And it's like, it was just like making me feel horrible, basically. And out of nowhere, I get a text from Ratso. Dylan put out a song, and it was that Murder Most Foul
Yeah.
song. And I listened to it. It was 6 a.m. when I got the text from Ratso, and I listened to it right away. And I just
All 20
cried.
minutes of it.
I just cried, and it was the song. Yeah, it was just everything. It was
Yeah.
hitting everything. I don't think Bob Dylan. It's funny to say this, but I don't think Bob Dylan has ever tapped into at the times more effectively than he did with that song and that record during this time. And that's saying a lot for a guy who kind of defined an entire decade of American culture.
Yeah, that's a bold statement there, but it makes sense. But it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. It's like maybe he's not going to have that cultural influence that he had then, but certainly artistically, I think that this is a high watermark of, 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 yeah, of
Yeah. And
Bob
I'll
Dylan.
tell you, the other Bob that came out with a record during COVID, Bob Mould, his
Okay.
last album, wow. I mean, it was just a shot in the arm, you
I
know?
got to hear it. I've never heard that one.
Oh, I forget what it's called. My Bob Mould is all the way at the other end. I can't even pull it out. It was the newest Bob Mould record.
Okay.
I don't remember names anymore, names of albums and whatnot, but it's certainly worth a listen. He came off of was the last one was Sunshine Rock, which is really a happy, just a happy poppy record. And the newest one here, which the name completely eludes me, is just it's a punch in the face. It's angry, raging Bob Mould, which I like the best.
Right on. I'll check that out for
Oh
sure. That
yes,
sounds awesome.
certainly worth a spin. Yeah, and a whole bunch of different variants. I got like a no, a white, black, and blue. I wish I knew the name of this record, but anyway, had I
Yeah.
been prepared, I could have written things down. All right, so tell us a little about
Yeah.
Caged Animals now. So you have a
Yeah.
new
So
album. You got a new album coming out in June, a couple of months, and you released a single. Now, The Ghost of Jesus. I heard this. You sent it out to me,
yeah.
and I mean, you paint such a beautiful picture with words. Like lyrically, it's as if you're within that scene that you're talking about. So tell us a little about that and the production of it, and was it recorded during this COVID time? Just go.
Right on. So yeah. So the inspiration of it was over the last bunch of years in our neighborhood in Bushwick. Uh, we watched the homelessness problem in our neighborhood just grow and grow, and it was I think it was connected to what's broadly talked about as the opiate crisis in America, because these guys were using drugs and using
Mhm.
needles on the street and living on the street, living underneath the scaffolding of a high rise building that was being built in our dingy Bushwick block. So it's connected to gentrification, it's connected to the opiate crisis, and just general income inequality in New York City. And it began with a couple men, and by the peak of it, there was about 20 men living under the scaffolding on our block.
Hmm.
And we had been in Bushwick since the early aughts or mid aughts, and back then it was a rough kind of drug neighborhood, and there were some gangs going on. And as the gentrification happened, that kind of stuff kind of came to a close. Some of it stayed, some of it left, but we never had that kind of a homelessness problem. And all of a sudden, we have all these men sleeping on the street and using needles, and it brought back to mind like how I remember New York in the '80s when I was like a kid, like coming into town with my dad and like being fascinated by New York, but also feeling like, whoa, like this is heavy. There's a lot of like stuff like right in your face. Um, and it made me remember the one homeless man who lived in our little Hawthorne, New Jersey town suburb, 15 minutes from the George Washington Bridge, but might as well be, in another country because
Right.
it's nothing, it was a suburban American town. And there, we had one homeless man, and he slept on in the little tract of woods between a busy road and the Passaic River, which is at the time it was the second most polluted body of water in the entire country. So a real disgusting area. And he slept there. And I was thinking of him. And I was thinking about those men sleeping on my block. And I just wrote this song of sort of like it's like a alcoholics redemption, or I don't want to give too specific of an image to it, but it's a song of redemption. And in the song, this homeless character, he has this sort of come to Jesus moment, and he swears he's gonna change all his ways. But I think I'm not religious personally, but I really kind of I wrote it. And you write lots of stuff, and sometimes you don't know why you wrote it, or why it connects to you as a person, why you should sing it. But I felt right away it connected to this person's desire for spirituality and desire for redemption in this very specific way. And even though it's all about Jesus, which is not something I'm personally so psyched on, I just felt deeply connected to it. So we recorded the song in New York, and I finished the mix up here during the pandemic, basically.
Now, when you record with caged animals, is it you're everyone's
Yeah.
recording in their own space, and they send you the well, I wouldn't be tapes anymore. They send you the files, and you mix it and produce it, master it, and whatnot, or are you doing it old school in a studio? And
On that one, we did the basic track of the band, like guitar, bass, and drums, all together in a studio, home studio. But
with
you know,
studio nonetheless.
we did it proper. So we played that stuff, and then we layered stuff on. Like I did the voice after. I did some of the additional overdubs, some keys, and backing vocals. And yeah, so it is a combination of the two, but not so much. I was a part of all the sessions that happened for it, and all of the actual recording happened pre-COVID, so we were able to do it like together
Yeah.
and stuff. But then what ended up happening is that COVID happened. I was like, we were just about to finish this record. COVID happened, and we uprooted ourselves here. And we had no idea what we were in store for when we came up here. I think Magali thought, oh, okay, we're going to have to stay home for the next month or two. Let's just, instead of staying home in our apartment, we'll stay at home in my mom's huge place in rural Canada, and it'll be nicer, you know? And it was a good thought. But what ended up happening was the border closed the day after we arrived here. So we were not able to go home.
Oh
We were not
my.
able to get our stuff. So we came up with our little Prius and our daughter and just a couple things. I brought my computer because I was in the middle of working on something, and my speakers, and just enough stuff to work, but not all of our. We left all our stuff in our apartment, and then the border closed. COVID was way worse than we ever knew. And what ended up happening was our friend had lost her apartment through some really gnarly COVID related circumstances where um, all her roommates bailed in March, but stopped paying the rent, right? And left her holding the bag. And so she
Right.
was going to lose her place, and she needed a place. And we were just paying our rent, but not living there. We're staying with her mom, and we're not living
Yep.
in our apartment. We're paying our rent. And
Here are the
so I was like,
keys.
if you need a place, take our place.
Yeah.
So we my sister and a couple friends got our stuff in a storage unit, and and our friend took over our spot. And then we were like, okay, so now that we're not paying our rent, we can rent something here. And we rented a spot up here, and and then my wife got pregnant, and then so we ended up being like, all right, so clearly we'll just keep staying here. So it all just kind of unraveled. Now we've been here for 14 months. I haven't seen my home and it's so long. I'm feeling
14 months.
super.
And you're a new dad. I mean, how old the baby's now? A month?
He's 2 months. He's
2 months.
2 months
Wow.
in a week. So it's all brand new. And yeah, and he was born here. It's really funny. He's a true Canadian.
How does that work? I mean, can he get? Does he have to like get American citizenship? It's I mean, if that's what if you want to do that, or
Yeah, totally.
okay,
Yeah. Well, I have to go through the whole process of like alerting to the U.S. that like I have a child because I'm a citizen. His mom is actually not a citizen. She's a Canadian citizen. So it's
right.
like we're already spending a couple months a year up here prior to COVID. Because
Yeah.
she got all the family up here. It's a nice place, etc. Um, but now we've been up here all this time. We got this new boy. Got to let the United States government know about him.
Now, I mean, the room that you're in now, it's a beautiful
Yeah.
room with the nice wood ceiling. Do you? To me, I don't know a whole lot about like acoustics, but that to me looks like it would be acoustically good for recording. Is
Yes.
it? I have no idea.
It's a great spot. So we're renting from a couple who were the place where we are, Sackville, New Brunswick, is actually I'm painting it as very rural. It's actually quite an amazing little town. It's They have the biggest art school in this part of Canada is in this town. So there's this community of visual artists and musicians and farmers and small town folks. It's like a convergence of like people in this
Right.
town, and there's this really great university kind of sustaining all of it. And the people who own this house were the head of the music department at this university. So they had their grand piano up here, and they had built this shed for performing music.
Oh wow.
So prior to me, our friend John McKeel, who's a great songwriter from this town,
Hmm.
had been using it as his recording studio. And I had
Oh
come to visit him here like at the first available time after like when basically the way that COVID has happened here is like we were locked down in April, May, like you're not allowed to see anybody. And Canada's dealt with it way different than the
hmm
US. Like when they say you're not allowed to see anybody, it's like if they catch you, you're gonna get a $10,000 fine.
just like
So
walking
like,
down a street.
well, yeah, they like if you like, pull your car into somebody's driveway and they're like, you shouldn't be here because like you're not supposed to be mingling, they'll
Wow.
find you. It's like
Wow.
that. So like people took it fucking serious up here,
Yeah.
and the numbers stayed down. And when the numbers came down in the summer, they opened it up into a situation where you could bubble with some people, like your
Right.
family members who you don't live with and
Hmm.
friends you don't live with. And so anyway, we ended up pairing up with some friends up here, and one of them was this musician John McKeel, and he had been renting this place with his family, and he was using this room for his studio. And I was like, oh my god! I came in here and he had tape machines set up and all the vinyl around, like all the cool stuff around, all the recording stuff. Like, man, if I had this in New York, I'd be like flying high. He's like, well, do you want it in Sackville? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we're gonna move out. We're gonna buy a place a couple towns away. Like, do you guys want to take over the lease here? I was like, obviously, this is a sign that we need to stay. I
Wow.
need to like make some records in this room and stay here. So that's the situation, you know.
So what have you worked? I mean, are you working on stuff in that room? Have you worked on stuff?
Tons of stuff. I've been working nonstop. Mainly what I'm doing these days is I'm doing a lot of fiction podcasting. So I'm directing basically radio plays remotely from this room, and then I go in and I do like the sound design and the music and editing and mixing, and I put it all together, and it's presented as like this world, audio play.
So
Um,
it's not like the schlocky stuff that I'm doing here with no edits and it's just like we hit record and then we just post it.
Yeah, well, it's like, well, this is great. This is a conversation, but these are more like really kind of like ornamented and like built up like sound worlds.
Yeah, yeah.
Like 15 minutes might take me like a week, if
Oh
you know what I
wow.
mean.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I've been doing that, been writing songs, and keeping real busy, mixing some records for some people from up here, and and I'm in a really fortunate position to uh, have people that still want to work with me and be able to do it in this remote way and still feed my family
Right. I mean,
with
the beauty
this work.
of the technology now is that you can be up in Canada and anyone can be all over the world, send you what they need, and you're rocking and rolling it. You're making it work.
Totally. Yeah, it's we've completely been fortunate, and and we're just adding to all this adding more podcasts into the world and more songs into the world and doing our thing. So it's been a cool thing, and I think probably this summer, hopefully, if the sadly the vaccinations up here are quite slow moving, so I think we're going to be on a more prolonged schedule of getting back to the normal here. But hopefully, if things are safe and cool, I might try and get a couple musicians up here and make a live record up in this cool room.
Nice.
Try and use it.
Well, the vaccinations in New
But
York now are it's just walk in and get it. There's not even, I don't think you need appointments at this point. It's just, they've got plenty of everything. So I was lucky.
that's so amazing.
Yeah, I've been vaccinated now since, I had my second shot in February. So I'm still ridiculously cautious with everything. I don't take chances, no mask. I haven't taken my mask off in front of someone out of my home yet. I won't eat out. I won't, take it off to drink any. I'm crazy with this. Maybe I don't have to be as crazy, but I am. Actually, the only time we're doing something, a benefit for Coney Island, which is going to happen Thursday, April 29th. So I did some filming last month. We're going to do some filming again, actually the day that this is airing on Monday. And but 90% of the people who were in that room have been vaccinated already. So for me to take my mask off and do something, I'm a lot more comfortable, but it still permeates. And I'm still like, well, what if one guy wasn't? And what if I breathe? It's my own
It's
mishigas, as
tough.
they say. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just you, just to make you feel a little bit better. Like it's going to take us all a long time to
Yeah.
get back where we were when this is
Yeah.
done. This has
Exactly.
been traumatic for everybody, I mean, watching my daughter go through it, and
Yeah.
and all of us. I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel least bad. The two groups I feel the most bad for are the very elderly and the very young, because I feel like
Yeah.
they don't
There
have the comfort and
exactly.
solid structure. They need lots of help, so
Exactly.
it's tough.
But I
It's
mean,
tough to
if
be
nothing
safe.
else, the last year has really just brought me to listen to a lot more records. I mean, a lot more records. So, you know,
Right
I
on,
I
man. You
I
got
I
an
don't mind
amazing
that.
collection.
It's
You got an amazing collection right there.
it grows, and I mean, I'm waiting for that new Alan Vega record to come out. I mean, it's
Right
released
on.
as per the recording. We're recording the day it's released. It should be here in my hands, hopefully tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then, yeah, there's always stuff coming out. So, and stuff that I just have
Yeah,
to
man.
fill.
Yeah.
But so when's the next Ratso record coming out?
So who knows? We haven't started anything, but we were on the phone the other day for a while, and we were like, we should make some more music, and it was the first time we had kind of said that to each other. So
Yeah.
I think it could happen kind of soon,
All
hopefully.
right. Well, I know I'm looking forward to that. And so your new record, the new Cage Animals record, is coming out in June. On all formats. What are you
Yeah,
doing? Vinyl, CD, obviously MP3, or you strictly, like Bandcamp type stuff. MP3.
vinyl and digital only. No CD and then no cassette.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. So
Yeah,
why
that's the way
why
we're
no
gonna do it,
CD?
because who knows if we'll be if,
Why no
because I'm
CD?
not sure we'll be able to tour it. Because I'm not sure we'll be able to tour it.
Right.
Basically, like that CDs are useful for when you're on tour. You can sell them and stuff, and but who knows with this pandemic, and like I think a small indie band like ours, Like we might not be like the most like we might not be at the front of venues' minds for when the industry gets back up and moving. So I think a lot of smaller bands like us are thinking like, okay, like all the venues are going to need to book up like all big bands, sell out every night, and do all this kind of stuff. And I think a band like us, I think it's kind of going to be a while before you see like the more niche bands out
Makes
there
sense.
doing. But who knows? I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong. But my thought was like, yeah, get some vinyl going and have it be available for streaming and for download.
Yeah.
Um, if we were going to go out and do like a full run in the U.S., yeah, we definitely have some CDs
Yeah.
because people buy them actually.
People are, I've we've talked about this. I've talked about this with other guests. I think CDs sort of have dipped. Vinyl is certainly outselling CDs now, but for the last year or so. But I still hold on to those CDs. I wouldn't get rid of them. They're gonna come back. It's gonna be a nostalgic thing.
It will for sure. I mean, I still have all my stuff on CD. I'm one of those guys who's never sold a record.
Yeah.
If I bought it, I held on to it because I bought it. That's my thing.
That's like me. That's I've unloaded a bunch of CDs years and years ago. We're talking 25, 30 years ago. I've unloaded records that just had no interest that I regret unloading now. But all right, there's nothing you can do about that. But the CDs over the years, I've gotten rid of some. But at this point, I think I've purged whatever I need to purge, and I'm just going to hold on to whatever it is, and we'll just hang on to those. But all right,
Yeah,
so
for
now
sure.
now here's something we discuss on every show. When you get a brand new record,
Yeah.
rip the shrink wrap right off. Or are you one of those who, gingerly goes right down the seam and just takes the record out?
Yeah, I'm like one of those.
Yeah, all right, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. When I was a kid, eh, I would if I lent somebody something. Sometimes because I'm not I'm careful with my albums. You know, I like to keep them nice. And I respect them. Same with my books. I just like to keep my stuff nice. I remember having friends who wouldn't. You'd come back and the CD booklet would be all bent, and you're like, "What is this?
The
Why'd you do
hell?
this to me?
Yeah.
You drive me crazy."
I
I remember I once a particularly bad friend. I gave him the booklet in a Ziploc bag, separate. I was like, "You can look at the art, but don't touch it."
oh yeah,
And I
I
never
I do
saw
that.
it getting
I
razzed.
I do that with books. If I have to bring a book somewhere, I put it in a Ziploc bag, and then it goes into whatever bag because, and I don't, bend the binding. Oh, I open it halfway and kind of peek into the book so I can read it. I get nuts with my stuff. Certainly lending things. No, that doesn't even exist. I don't lend stuff.
Yeah. At this point, that's a no as well. But back when and I've gotten better with it, but I was a little too fastidious, let's say, with my
Yeah.
stuff. But no, I always, I don't always leave the shrink wrap on, but I'm not like a rip it apart kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, like these two Vega records. I mean, it's one Vega record that I ordered. I ordered one of the like the deluxe edition and the regular edition. There was like a middle of the road edition that I didn't get, and it'll arrive. I'll keep the deluxe edition sealed, and open up the regular edition and listen to that. And it's just gonna go right on a shelf.
Wow.
So
Yeah, a guy I know worked on it. This guy Jared, who I played a bunch of shows with him. He has a band called the Vacant Lots. They're a good band, and he worked on that Alan Vega thing, I believe. Nice. Oh, yeah, right on.
so I was speaking with Jared, and hopefully he's going to be. We'll be chatting in a couple of weeks. So yeah,
Right
vacant
on.
lots
Great.
are great, and he and let me just get this back. He ended up producing a lot of that, like the posthumous Vegas stuff. There was a single that was out in the last year that he produced, and he wrote the forward for the new. There was like a new Vega book, kind of like like sketch pad notebook type thing, scribblings. And he wrote the forward for that, and produced this Mutator, the new Vega record. So
Right
I'm
on.
looking
Yeah.
forward to that. I'm looking forward to chatting with them because I think vacant lots are great too.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah. My previous band, Soft Black, did a string of dates with them in 2009, I think it was. And then we got to know Jared that way. But yeah, great guy, and it's cool to see him working on this cool project with Alan Vega's estate. I mean, come on, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, legendary, Alan Vega, absolutely legendary. Anyway, so I guess we're kind of I think we're way past an hour already. But all right, let's start wrapping up here. Anything else that you want to share or before we sign off?
Oh well, if you're interested in hearing the new Caged Animal single, "The Ghost of Jesus," it's on all the different streaming sites. And if you want to pick up a copy of the record, we're selling it, right on our Bandcamp, cagedanimalsbandcamp.com, and check that out. But I got it's very limited. We only got 300 copies pressed to vinyl, and it's going to be on a nice, like kind of like orange, like burnt orange kind of vinyl. And I'm
Nice.
excited to have that on a record, and I think it's our best stuff too. So I'm pretty pumped to share it with people.
And we will have all of the caged animal links in the I can never remember in the discussion below, and of course all of Vincent's links in the discussion below as well. So wow, thank you so much for taking the time, for staying in that beautiful roofed room of yours, and our
Right
ceiling
on.
room, and just hanging out. It's a great discussion. So let me do my sign off, and then we will say goodbye. So friends, thank all of you for tuning in. This has been episode 13. I can't believe that I've actually done 13 of these already. So my attention deficit usually winds down after a few, but all right, we're going to go with it. The feedback seems pretty good. And speaking of feedback, if you like the show, subscribe and hit like and leave comments, so that improves the metadata of what goes on, and then more people can see it, more people can enjoy our little chats about music and records and today and what have you. So anyway, friends, once again, this has been Your Personal Record. I'm Adam Reelman. Our special guest today, Vincent Cacchione, and I said it correctly that time, I hope. And yeah, did I?
You said it right both times.
All right, good. Now, like I said, normally I review it first, and I was just so anxious in chatting that I didn't. But all right, Caged Animals, check them out. All of the information will be down below. And thank you for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Adam. This has been a great time chatting with you.
All right, so we will stop recording, and then we'll chat for a second. All right, bye everybody, and thank you.